Welcome back to the OC story. This is part 21, where I improvise my way through a story and you guys vote for things in the comments which will shape the course of the narrative. Now, once again, I have had a few different ideas. So the votes I'm going to be asking you guys to do in the comment sections from now on are going to be steering the story almost in bigger ways, because my brain has been going absolutely haywire while I've been going over this story, because as a lot of you will know, I've been trying to write it into a book. I'm currently up to chapter 4, and that is not as far through as you think, because obviously when you write the book, you are expanding on things, giving more to things, more than I've just given in improvised video essays on YouTube kind of thing. So the things that I'm thinking for the future might mean that the book ends up taking a completely different story to this one right here. But it also means I've got a lot of different possible outcomes, and the things you guys will pick will, well, a bit like a D&D campaign. You can pick something and it will steer the course of the narrative and we will see what happens. So yeah, all that to say, I've got plenty of ideas, and last time you guys voted for a big one. The overriding majority was asking for yes, you want these celestial powers to have a moment. So let's make it happen, shall we? All right. Before we jump back into the story, which we are going to be starting with Darrow the Assassin now, I do want to do a quick content and trigger warning, but alongside them a sneaky little bit of sort of sneaky preview for the book version that I'm writing. So the content and trigger warning is to say that while I will be glossing over a lot of what happens to Darrow, there will be still some things that are inferred, some lines of dialogue I have kept, some sort of not quite explanations, but sort of, a glossing over vague references, that kind of thing. So listen with caution, and if you are not sure you're in the right space to hear about essentially torture, then while it will be as vague as I can make it for YouTube, I will put chapters in the bottom so you can just skip to the next bit. I will very clearly label Darrow's section with a content and trigger warning. It will say CWTW and it will say Darrow on it, and then after that you can skip to the next bit if you want to skip it. In terms of the book, I will be including all of it in the chapter. So if you are desperate to hear about all that horrible angst, then that will definitely be in the book, and I've just written a bunch of it, because while I was thinking of this scene, a lot of it was in my head, and so I wanted to get it out so I knew which bit I did and didn't want to include for YouTube. So if you're not too worried, carry on listening, and if you are at any point, then skip ahead to the next bit. Alright, all that being said, let's dive in with Darrow. Deep under the ground, below the streets of the capital, past the sewer system, and deeper than the hideouts and burrows criminals carved, there is a space. It would perhaps be overgenerous to call it a room, but that will do. The space has been dug into the soil, dirt-smooth walls, and a floor stained in old red. A figure stands in the centre, barely on tiptoe, suspended and skimming the floor, wrists bound raw under rope. Blue eyes stared blearily around as his mind raced. There was always a way out. Always. Even if it meant fighting. But Darrow had no means of fighting now. He had not a thing in the world, as he hung there in nothing but new bruises and old scars. A dribble of something dripped past his lips, landing congealed with the mess on the ground. New red met old. Well, a voice fell from the doorway. Darrow twitched, but made no reply. Darrow cast. Still, he said nothing. Look at me, Darrow. A croon without caress poured from the man who entered the space. He walked tall, wiry, and alert, drawing closer to the hanging assassin on soft leather footsteps. You are only making this harder. With a long sigh, a gloved hand slid slowly under the assassin's chin, turning his head. Darrow growled, resisting the tug. Lumens chuckled. You owe me, Darrowcast. A fingernail traced across snarling lips. You owe a lot of people, matter of fact. The fingernail dragged. I brought one of them, an old friend, to see you. Heat and breath met Darrow's cheek. He's been looking for you for a long time, and so have I. Still, the assassin did not say a word. It was cold down under the earth. A shiver threatened to rip right through him, but he gritted his teeth and remained still, blue gaze locked on the floor. "Oh, well, looky at you." A new voice broke from the doorway. It rang out, filth-ridden and foul. The hulking form of Maximus stepped into the chamber. Lumens was laughing again, clutching Darrow's face tight as the vast man reached them. Toes scrabbled at the floor, hands tugged at their restraints. This brought a low, rumbling sneer rising at a cruel grin. "You cheated me, cuss." Maximus stalked around the bound man once in long, slow strides. "You blunted out after I let you in on a top job. Caused me weeks," a hand curled around Darrow's throat, "of damned upheaval." The grip tightened. Lumens leaned closer, his own hand heavy at the assassin's jaw as Maximus went on. "You lost me dozens of paying customers. Think anyone would trust my word after the stunt you pulled? And worse than that, you don't even know. You don't even understand what you ruined. You might have lost us everything. If they go through with it, 'cause you blunted out, oh, you will never stop screaming." There was a fury roaring in every breath, every step, every swing of closed fists. It was all in hand, all ready, and then... Air caught in the assassin's throat as two hands now tightened. The world was a haze, fogging over as he strained against their grip. Maximus whispered the next words direct into Darrow's ear. "Then you didn't even have the decency to die, like you were told to." White fog threatened to embrace and overtake the assassin. His eyes smudged and blurred and then went blind. As he stared into nothingness, the white overtaking and surrounding him, and a small part of him longed for that blank nothingness, that terrifying nothing where he was drifting, uncontrollable, unable to really do anything. But it must be better than this. It wouldn't hurt like this. The hands at his throat seemed miles and miles away. And then something flickered in the corner of his vision. He turned his head without turning it, and his vision was swam and eaten up by vague memories. He was running. He was young, a child, all bare hands and bare feet. There were flowers and crowds of people. He was getting on a cart. He was older. They were driving somewhere he didn't care. And then he was older still, and he remembered being dropped in the town where everything had gone, well, so much worse. But he'd met Eerie, so really things had got better, eventually. Then he was older still, and he remembered Eerie again. He remembered the carriage, the upturned carriage, the chaos, the kiss in the rain. Then the two hands released him. Cold air ignited the patches they had held. Shivers threatened to spill and spiral. It'll all be over soon. Lumens stretched, his jacket falling into the dirt, arms bare and bared. But not too soon. Warm spit splattered across Darrow's cheek from the other direction. Fucking blunter. Maximus was closer again, all teeth and bristled skin clouding blue vision. Miserable shit. I'd have wrote it all off your corpse. All you owe me. But you just had to go and run, didn't you? Pathetic little bastard. Shadows twitched as the hanging assassin tried to pull away. Later, when he looked back without trying to on this moment, Darrow would be glad he couldn't remember much of it. It was all blurs and smudges and half-baked thoughts. Hits landed, low and square. He would wheeze and choke, blood would trickle from what felt like everywhere. He remembered bile rising time and again to the back of his throat. It mingled horribly with the sweet taste of those treats they'd had at the royal ball. His face was seized over and over, bruising swelled on his cheeks, and lumens raked long fingers through pale hair. How do you want to beg us to do it, Darrow? Strip our dues from your flesh, or destroy you body and damned soul? He remembered thick, heavy nails joining the slender ones. They dug grooves into bruised shoulders. Answer in, Darrow cast. Me and Lumens have been mighty patient. Growls rose and fell from the hanging assassin's lips. Blunter! Over and over again, the word with a punch, the word with a slice, the word with a hit. Somewhere, everywhere. He glared upwards at the dank ceiling, as Lumens prowled back and forth, watching Maximus have his way. Pick before we pick for you, the vast man had snarled in his ear. The assassin had shook his head. He would not choose. He wouldn't pick, wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Then heavy hands were at his throat again, and Darrow gasped what he felt sure and certain must be his final breath. But of course, they never let it be. Darrow. Lumens was purring, coiled, ready to spring. Look at me, Darrow. You are making this so much worse than it has to be. But still, the assassin did not move. Did not look the man in the eyes, neither of them. He wouldn't do it. Wouldn't let them see him afraid. Wouldn't let them see the light leave his eyes. He would not. If you do not choose, if you do not beg us to be sparing and swift, then I shall tear what I am owed from you piece by piece. I will not let you live. I will ensure it. Cold and heat at his throat. Cold sharp. Cold blade. Cold breaking his skin. Both snapping, heated mouths were at his ears, laughter dripping in pools as Lumens went on and on and on. You will find no respite. You will find no gates of hell calling you to an ever after. You will watch as we take every single thing from you, and you will know it is you who caused this. All because of your own cowardice, your own betrayal. So say something. Beg for a swift end you do not deserve. Beg me, Darrow cast. Maximus joined in then, voice soft as the earth shattering. Do it, Blunter. Beg for us to end your miserable life. You've been on borrowed time for too damn long. Beg us. Go on. Beg. Words shook and shivered. Blue eyes faded in the dark. Darrow felt his chest caving in. Fog thundered and rolled, crashing with every snap of teeth. It filled and spilled under and over his every thought. Cries threatened to echo off his tongue, but he would not allow them to burst. Look at me. More words upon words. Beg! They made him dream, drift and float and crash into a blanket of nothing. There is always a way out. Beg, cast. Had he lived this moment 1,000 times before? Or was it still the one and only? Slice. Was this everything he had ever known? Smack. Who was he? Why was he alive? What was he doing? Slice. Where was he going? What had he done? Where could he do things ever again? Smack. Who would mourn him? Slice. Who would know his name? What was he? Who had him? How had he ever... Look at me, Darrow. Was that his name? It was hot and it was freezing, burning and cold. Did it matter? Look at me. Fighting to be free and begging for a chance to live, but they would never. He would stay and he would fall and it would never ever stop bleeding. His back ached, his skin prickled. Was it tearing right through him? They had already begun. Blades everywhere. Some were nails on jagged fingers. They must be. It made tatters of him all at once. Look at me! Insistent. Mocking, perhaps. Did he mean to? Everything he knew was ice and blank, feathers on a page. Was he merely sketching out his life? How to draw a breath. Look at me when I'm speaking to you! Blue eyes flew open amidst a shattering of worlds. Had he ever known fear like this? Thoughts turned to memories, turned to dreams, turned to mist, cracking and breaking into fragments of life unlived and too well remembered. Stab! He was buried, hidden in the dark, convulsing, his breath shook from his lungs. Slice! He was blasted into pieces and tangled up in the sky. Twist! He was drifting on a relentless current in white emptiness. Drip, drip, red, drip, drip. He was crying, sobbing an uncontrollable wail into dirt. Stab! Something was breaking and he along with it. Slice! He was about to die. Stab! And then a voice came. A new voice, but an old voice. One he didn't recognize. He'd never heard it before. But at the same time it felt so familiar, it clutched at his heart. It said only one thing he didn't understand. But still, over and over, it rang through his mind as images swirled and memories faded and grew around him. Castellane. Over and over. Castellane. And then he was in a clearing. Beautiful summer trees under a sweet, warm, moonlit sky. Stars shone and sparkled down around them. He was on his knees, but he wasn't begging. He wasn't crying. He was looking up at the sky. And it was eerie he was offering his heart to. Stab! He could taste the end of his life coming. Slice, slam, stab, drip, crimson red drip. And then Erasmus's eyes filled his mind. Erasmus's smile, the touch of his hands. He missed him more than anything he could possibly imagine. And then the assassin was screaming. Guttural, ripped up from his core. He would see him again. He would not die like this. Not here, not now. Something burned white hot at his back, and it grew as his voice did, louder and brighter, light from the darkness, light from the black. What was that? Bright, so bright, too bright. Something was killing him, something illuminating snarls, something blazing deep, deep under the earth. The assassin screamed harder, and it broke as he broke. It blistered and it remained, and the world exploded. Darrow? This must be death. The great fathomless pit of abyss. Fire and ashes and brimstone any moment. Darrow! He was shattered. He was broken. He was grabbed and grappled and shredded to pieces just as they had promised. They'd never let him go. Not even into the soil and the dirt, trampled and trodden but never died. Red bled into the blankness, billowing red, great swipes of it. Were those his hands? Blades shook as breaths rang out, and he heard the clang of steel, and 2 thuds, loud, crashing into his ears. Grunts, groans, more red on red. Darrow, hey, Blondie, darling? He had always pictured hell to be darkness, smoke and fire and darkness. This was white. This was vast. This was empty of even the flames. What was it? Darrow, it's me. It's Eerie. It's Eerie, I've got you. A third thump sounded. It was closer than the others. It was him. A warm, dry cloak was wrapped closely around him, and he slowly managed to stand, held by two strong hands and two smaller ones. The room was a blur and a mess, but Darrow wouldn't leave just yet. As they were stepping over someone's body, he paused, shaking his head, though it made his thoughts ache and burn. He looked around carefully, blinking blurred eyes, trying to make sense of everything. Lumens lay dead on the floor behind them. Something had shattered right through his chest, and someone had punched him hard in the face. But Maximus, the hulking brute of a man, was still breathing just before them. The assassin, gripping on tight to the cloak, but determined, knelt down in the dirt. He pressed a knee into the biggest wound in Maximus's shoulder, and he demanded information. Who paid for the hit? Who started all this? Maximus growled, an echo of Darrow's earlier one. The assassin held out a hand. Pass me a knife. Lumen's got some on his belt. Maximus began to laugh, but blood curdled and coughed up over his tongue. All I know is his first name, Furnace. Lumen said the guy paid every coin up front, wanted the king and the princes taken out in one go, paid top dollar. What else? Fuck you, Cast. Don't make me ask again. You ain't gonna last long, and I can make it hurt a lot more, like you was gonna. Lumens was looking for you, filthy blunter. You took the money and ran. Now you think you're owed any answers. I went on the fucking hit. What? I was there, just as planned. Got wise to what was going on when I heard the others get caught. You think I was gonna stick around after that? I hid, and I got the fuck out of there. That makes me a blunter, then so be it. I ain't got myself hanged or chucked in a dungeon. Reckon I'm doing good so far. Liar! Believe what you want, I don't care no more. So what else do you know about Furnace? He's gotten in with the palace guards. Lumens knew it was one of you what ratted him out. I said you weren't smart enough, so it must have been him. Pass me a knife. I'm finishing this. Darrow, we have to go. Give me a knife. But then, noises. Noises, running, feet and shouting voices. We have to go, Darrow. Tinny, quiet but determined at his elbow. They stood, slowly. His legs shook below him as he stared down at the mass of Maximus. And though the assassin didn't know it, he and Erasmus were thinking exactly the same thing in that moment. They were wishing that they had time to stab the man through the throat. But they didn't. They had to leave. So they rose carefully and quietly and started running back through the tunnel that Tinny and Erasmus had come from. Darrow didn't make it far. His head was ablaze with weight. Everything was drumming and thrumming, his heartbeat too loud, too heavy in his chest. He felt the white and the darkness enclose around him, and his head lolled and fell and twisted down onto Erasmus's shoulder. The two ran on, carrying him with them. He blurred in and out of focus, in and out of consciousness. He could still put one foot in front of the other. But that word kept echoing in his mind, slowly, quietly, somewhere in the back of his soul and his heart. A word in a voice he did not recognize, but that felt so very familiar. Castellane. But everything blinked and went too white for him to focus anymore, and his head rested completely on Erasmus's shoulder as he lost all his consciousness with the world. It was Tinny's idea, and really, it was a good one. No one would suspect it at all. It was Truly, not only the only place they could go, but also possibly the safest. And so, carefully holding Darrow up between them, they crept their way to the edge of the palace and slipped in through one of the many hidden passages that Tinny had known and loved for many years. She went first, and, as they arrived at the hatch in the long gallery towards the back of the place, she peered up through the rungs and said, "Shh, stay here. Charlie's up there. I think he's waiting for me." "You must be in trouble. We've been gone such a long time. They must have noticed, Tinny."
"Yeah, I know. I'll just tell him I'm really super sorry and I got super distracted eating ice cream. It's sort of true. And I'll see you both there later on. I'll get there as soon as I can."
"All right, Tinny. Thank you."
"You'll be careful too, won't you?"
"Of course. And you're definitely sure that no one will be there?"
"No, no one's been there for months and months. It's all cordoned off. They don't even have guards there. No one goes down that side. You'll be absolutely fine."
"Thank you, Tinny."
"All right, gonna go and face the music now."
"All right." Tinny pushed open the hatch, and Erasmus peered up in the dark, listening. She began talking at once, walking away, distracting the man who no doubt stood just above them.
"Before you say anything, I know already. I know. I was gone too long, you were all worried, they could have been looking for me, wah, 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 wah. I was just eating a lot of ice cream."
Eerie did recognise the voice of the man who spoke to her as she was leading him away quickly out of the gallery. He did remember the jester. They hadn't had many conversations, but he'd watched him perform enough times to recognise that voice. It was softer, though, more of a natural voice than the jester charade he put on most of the time. "I appreciate your storytelling, but you don't think I'm really going to believe all of those tall tales, do you, Tinny girl? I was worried. You're just lucky your mother didn't notice."
"She really didn't?"
"No, she went to bed early."
"Early? Oh, I see."
The door closed as the two of them headed further out of the room and into the palace. Erasmus waited one more moment before slowly and carefully pulling himself out of the hatch and Darrow beside him. He replaced the thing and crept slowly out of the opposite door, heading towards the eastern end of the palace. Darrow groaned softly. He was mostly awake now, but he couldn't speak, could barely think, just enough to put one foot in front of the other, his arm slung around the prince's shoulders. Eventually, after nearly an hour of slow, careful creeping, Erasmus ducked Darrow under the ropes and led him down an old, dusty corridor that hadn't been cleaned or walked down for many months. He turned a large handle, and a tall door creaked open, and the two of them stepped into Prince Erasmus's bedroom. That is where I'm going to leave it for now. Please leave any thoughts you have in the comments down below, and as always, here is something for you guys to vote on. I can't decide if this is going to be a yes or a no, but one of the options is this. You guys wanted to have more of Darrow's celestial powers coming out and to delve into that a little bit, so would you like to continue on in that vein? Because there is an idea that I could ignite a little bit and we could continue with that and have a bit more about Darrow's past and future come out, or we could go in another direction and we could lean into a little bit more about Tinny and Erasmus and their family. Or, as I know you guys love to pick, option 3, all of the above. There is a way of combining the two together, or perhaps making them run sort of parallel. So if you guys would dearly love to have both, then let me know both in the comments down below. Or if you would like one or the other, or any combination of things, let me know that as well. So your choices today are, would you like to continue with Darrow's celestial history and potential backstory and future story, that kind of thing? Or would you like to refocus into Eerie and Tinny and their family and what's going on there? Or, as always, both. Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you for listening and for your interest, and I will talk to you all very, very soon, and I will see you in a Monday Madness. Bye bye.